On the third anniversary of my marriage, my close friend Mandy sent me a video in which she was passionately entangled with my husband Ethan, set against the backdrop of our marital home's master bedroom. Shortly thereafter, she sent another message, "You don't know yet, do you? Ethan says he loves it most when I call him husband while beneath him." In my previous life, upon witnessing this, I succumbed to a breakdown and lost my sanity, ultimately being accidentally pushed off a tall building by Ethan during an altercation. In this reborn life, as I observed the couple's fervent embrace in the video, I calmly dialed a number. "Hello, is this paparazzo Tommy? I have a major scoop guaranteed to hit the headlines. Interested?" The video's angle was cunningly discreet, seemingly captured from an ornament on the bedside table. Mandy's face, once so intimately familiar to me, was now flushed with arousal, while the man atop her was Ethan, my husband of 3 years. The setting was none other than our marital bedroom, featuring the European-style carved bed I had personally selected and the dim yellow bedside lamp, a unique piece I had procured from Italy. At the video's conclusion, Mandy flashed a victorious V sign toward the camera. In my past life, upon viewing this video, a surge of blood rushed to my head. I frantically smashed everything in the house and stormed into the Hook Corporation like a shrew, slapping Ethan in front of everyone. I demanded to know why he had betrayed me, yet he merely regarded me with cold detachment, as if observing an irrational lunatic, saying, "Jasmine, have you caused enough of a scene?" Our confrontation extended from the company to our home, culminating on the rooftop where, in an attempt to break free from my grasp, he inadvertently pushed me over the edge. As my body plummeted, I glimpsed panic in his eyes and, behind him, Mandy's triumphant smile. In this second life, I am no longer the Jasmine who merely wept and wailed. I closed the video and opened Mandy's newly updated profile picture, a selfie in which she wore the globally limited edition haute couture gown Ethan had gifted me, a blatant act of provocation. Moments later, her message appeared, "Jasmine, Ethan says he loves it most when I call him husband while beneath him. He says you're like a lifeless wooden beauty, and only with me does he feel like a true man. Oh, by the way, today marks our 5th anniversary together earlier than your marriage," she added. I gazed at these taunting words without responding, calmly preserving all chat logs and the video. Then, I dialed a number long stored in my contacts but never called. The voice on the other end sounded surprised, tinged with caution. "Ethan's wife?" I chuckled softly. "Tommy, long time no see." The top figure in the paparazzi world. Presumably at the behest of Ethan's rivals, in my previous life, Tommy had offered a hefty sum to extract dirt on Ethan from me, an offer I had ruthlessly declined. I once naively believed I needed to uphold my husband's flawless image. How laughable that seems now. "I have a scoop on Ethan that's sure to make headlines. Do you want it?" I asked, prompting Tommy's breath to quicken abruptly. "Jasmine, are you serious? Ethan, CEO of the Hook Corporation, committed adultery with the popular starlet Mandy during our marriage. I have videos and photos. Is that sufficient?" A deathly silence ensued on the other end until, after a long pause, Tommy regained his voice, stammering with excitement, "Enough. More than enough. Jasmine, rest assured I've navigated this industry for years and know the rules. I'll handle it impeccably for you. 5 minutes from now, I'll send the materials to your email. As for payment, decide as you see fit," I said, hanging up and glancing at the wall clock. It was 8 p.m., and Ethan was due home soon. Ethan returned at 10 p.m., seemingly fresh from a drinking engagement, his body carrying a faint scent of alcohol mingled with a subtle trace of women's perfume. Mandy's signature, Peerless Diva. In my previous life, I had a fierce argument with him over this scent, yet he brushed it off casually, claiming it was from a business social event and unintentionally acquired. Seeing me on the sofa, he appeared mildly surprised and tossed his suit jacket aside. "Why didn't you have Mrs. Jean cook today?" he asked. I stepped forward with a smile. "Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary. I cooked your favorite dishes myself." Ethan's expression softened slightly. He pinched my cheek, his tone laced with a condescending tenderness. "You've worked hard, the company's been busy lately, and I forgot." "It's fine," I replied, still smiling, though my eyes harbored a frigid chill, "as long as you remember to come home." In my past life, I often uttered such words, only to receive his perfunctory embrace and a "you're the most understanding," yet the cost of such compliance was irreparable ruin. The atmosphere at the dinner table was somewhat subdued. Ethan ate absent-mindedly, his phone screen intermittently lighting up. I glanced over and saw the contact labeled M. As he replied, a faint smile tugged at his lips, unnoticed even by himself. My heart felt like being stabbed by a needle, but I soon regained my composure. How could I suddenly not care about the relationship we have had for so many years? But it didn't matter. Soon, he couldn't laugh anymore. Ding-dong, his phone chimed with a special alert notification. Headlines from major news outlets blared. Hua Corporation CEO Ethan cheats with starlet Mandy. Intimate video leaks. Tycoon's marriage collapses. Fairy tale shattered. Mandy knowingly interferes in Ethan's marriage as the third party. Glaring headlines swiftly overtook the entire screen, each tagged with a bold red explosive marker. Ethan's complexion paled incrementally. He abruptly looked up at me, eyes brimming with shock. Jasmine, did you do this? I set down my chopsticks, gracefully wiped my mouth with a napkin, met his gaze, and smiled gently yet innocently. Ethan, what are you talking about? I don't understand. You're still pretending. He roared, sweeping the dishes off the table. The sharp, piercing sound of shattering porcelain rang out as scalding broth splashed onto the back of my hand, stinging fiercely. Yet I didn't so much as flinch. This pain was trivial compared to the shattering agony of my previous life. I said it wasn't me. Couldn't it be Mandy who leaked it herself? I stood, looking down at him imperiously. Perhaps she's aiming to take my place. At that moment, his phone began ringing incessantly. Calls flooded in from his assistant, the Hua Corporation's PR department, and the Hua family patriarch. He fumbled to answer, bellowing into the receiver, "Suppress it. Spare no expense, get those trending topics removed." After hanging up, he glared at me with bloodshot eyes. Jasmine, what exactly are you trying to do? Do you realize the consequences? The Hua family stock will crash, and the entire company will suffer. So what? I sneered. If the stock price falls, it's your loss, Ethan, not mine. If the company is impacted, it's due to your mismanagement. You brought this upon yourself. You're insane. He lunged forward, seizing my throat and pinning me against the cold wall. A suffocating sensation overwhelmed me instantly, his ferocious visage mirroring the moment he pushed me off the building in my past life. For a woman, you'd destroy me and everything we have? His voice dripped with disappointment and anguish, as though I were the betrayer. I struggled to muster a faint smile. Ethan, there's been no us for a long time. Since the moment you and Mandy tumbled into our marital bed, it ceased to exist. His grip tightened further. Just as I thought I might die by his hand once more, the villa's doorbell rang, its timing jarringly inopportune. Ethan's movement faltered. Seizing the chance, I shoved him away and gulped fresh air. An anxious female voice called from outside, "Ethan. Ethan, open the door. Are you okay?" It was Mandy. She dared to show up at our doorstep. Ethan's face turned exceedingly grim. He was undoubtedly overwhelmed, likely aware that a swarm of reporters, drawn by the scandal, awaited outside. Mandy's arrival at this juncture was akin to pouring fuel on the fire. "Tell her to get lost," he growled, irritably raking his hair. I adjusted my disheveled collar, approached the video intercom, and pressed the talk button. On the screen, Mandy appeared tear-streaked, her makeup smeared, evoking pity. "Ethan, I know you're furious right now. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have sent those things to provoke Jasmine. Please let me in. I want to explain and apologize to her in person." As she spoke, she subtly glanced at a concealed camera with the corner of her eye. A masterfully scheming White Lotus. In my previous life, she had used this same pitiable demeanor to convince everyone I was a jealous madwoman. I chuckled lightly and opened the door. Mandy hadn't anticipated this, her face betraying a fleeting shock before reverting to her frail, innocent facade as she lifted her skirt to rush in. Ethan. I stepped aside to block her path, obstructing both her advance and the view of the countless flashing cameras outside. "Miss Mandy," I said with a smile, my voice soft yet audible to the reporters at the door, "my husband is currently unavailable to receive guests. Whatever you have to say, you can tell me instead." Mandy bit her lip, tears welling up on cue. "Jasmine, I know you hate me, but Ethan and I genuinely love each other. We've known each other for 5 years. If not for the family alliance, I'd be the one by his side now." "Oh? Is that so?" I raised an eyebrow. Yet here I stand. As long as I don't relinquish the position of Mrs. Ethan, it will never be yours. You. Mandy's face paled with anger, yet she had to maintain her persona, resorting to aggrieved tears. Jasmine, what exactly do you want? Ethan emerged as well. The reporter's flashes instantly became blinding perfect, precisely the effect I desired. I regarded the pitiful pair before me, my smile deepening. I don't want anything, I said, spreading my hands innocently. I merely wish to remind Ethan that the one you're protecting now is the person you cheated with during our marriage. Are you trying to confirm your guilt in front of all these media? Ethan's complexion shifted between green and white, a vivid spectacle. Only then did he realize his emotions had clouded his judgment. He tried to distance himself from Mandy, but she clung to his arm, sobbing louder. Ethan, don't push me away. I know it's my fault. Please don't be angry with me. The reporters, as if injected with adrenaline, clicked their shutters incessantly. Ethan, what is your relationship with Miss Mandy? Do you intend to divorce Jasmine? Miss Mandy, don't you feel ashamed for meddling in someone else's marriage? Ethan's PR team finally arrived, expending immense effort to separate the reporters and escort him and Mandy, disheveled, into the car. The car sped off, leaving chaos in its wake. I closed the door, shutting out the external clamor. The living room lay in disarray, as if it had just endured a battle. The scalded spot on the back of my hand had blistered, burning intensely, yet I seemed numb to it, methodically cleaning up the debris on the floor. Tonight was merely the beginning. Ethan, Mandy, all the pain you inflicted upon me in my previous life, I will make you repay 100-fold, 1,000-fold. The next morning, as anticipated, the Hua Corporation's stock price hit its limit down. The headline, Hua Corporation's market value evaporates by tens of billions, dominated the financial news. I was leisurely sipping coffee, admiring my handiwork, when an unfamiliar call came in from the Hua family's old residence. On the other end was my perpetually haughty mother-in-law, Patricia. Her voice brimmed with suppressed fury. Jasmine, get back here immediately. I finished my last sip of coffee at a leisurely pace before responding unhurriedly. Mom, what do you need me for? You still have the nerve to call me Mom? Look at what you've done. You've utterly disgraced the Hua family. Patricia roared over the phone. Mom, you've got it wrong, I chuckled lightly. The disgrace stems from your son who can't control his baser urges, not from me, the victim. You wretch. You're determined to ruin Ethan and our Hua family. I'm merely reclaiming what's mine, she countered. I order you to hold a press conference immediately and tell everyone that video is fake, that you fabricated it to frame Ethan out of spite. I reacted as if I'd heard an absurd joke. Mom, have you gone senile? You want me to clear the name of that adulterous pair? Do you think that's even remotely possible? On the other end, Patricia was so infuriated she couldn't speak for a moment, her heavy breathing audible. Jasmine, don't forget your brother's company still relies on Hua family funding. If you dare defy me, believe me, one word from me could bankrupt him and erase your Liang family from Jiangqing. The same old tactic in my previous life. She used my brother Miles' company to coerce me into silence and submission, but now, things are different. The first action I took upon my rebirth was to liquidate all my personal properties and shares, discreetly addressing the funding deficits of Miles' company and securing several substantial overseas contracts for him. The Liang family no longer needs to heed the Hua family's whims. Mom, feel free to try, I said nonchalantly. Let's see whether the Liang family vanishes first or the Hua family's stock price drops below its issue price. With that, I hung up decisively. Hearing the busy tone, Patricia smashed her phone in rage. Meanwhile, I donned a sophisticated suit, applied meticulous makeup, and drove to the Liang group. When I arrived, Miles was conducting a senior management meeting. My sudden appearance surprised him, but he promptly adjourned the meeting and ushered me into his office. Sis, why are you here? The Hua family, they haven't troubled you, have they? His face was etched with concern given the news magnitude. He couldn't possibly be unaware. I shook my head and handed him a document. This is the transfer agreement for all my real estate and equity. Take it to a lawyer to process. Miles was aghast. Sis, what are you doing? Are you divorcing Ethan? Yes, I affirmed, but what about the company? If the Hua family pulls their investment? I cut him off, don't worry, they can't withdraw it. Moreover, I intend to acquire Hua Corporation shares. Miles' eyes widen like saucers. Sis, are you feverish? Acquire Hua? Where would we get that kind of money? Leave the money to me, I replied, my gaze resolute. Miles regarded me, brimming with doubts, yet ultimately nodded firmly, I trust you. Since childhood, my younger brother has always heeded me most, which is why I'm willing to support him. In my previous life, after my death, he sought vengeance for me, pitting himself against overwhelming odds, only to be driven far away by Ethan, his whereabouts unknown. In this life, I aim not only to protect him but to elevate him to an unrivaled pinnacle. After departing the Leon group, I arranged to meet Tommy at a discreet tea house. He was already there when I arrived, rising immediately and addressing me respectfully, Miss Jasmine. I slid a thick envelope toward him. This is your payment. Tommy opened it, his eyes widening. Miss Jasmine, you're too generous. This. Take it, I said, lifting my teacup and blowing gently on the steam. This time, I need your assistance. Tommy grasped my intent instantly, pocketing the envelope. Miss Jasmine, command me as you will. I, Tommy, will brave any peril without hesitation. I need you to keep tabs on Ethan and Mandy. I want to know their every move. Additionally, investigate all Hua Corporation projects from the past 5 years, particularly those with irregularities. The more detailed the information, the better. Tommy's face betrayed difficulty. Miss Jasmine, obtaining internal Hua Corporation data isn't easy. I'm aware it's challenging, I replied, setting down my cup and meeting his gaze directly, but I assume you'd be delighted to see Hua brought down, wouldn't you? Tommy, a mere paparazzo leader, could release Ethan's dirt so brazenly I was certain he had backing, likely from someone at odds with Ethan. The smile vanished from Tommy's face. After a pause, he acquiesced. Miss Jasmine, rest assured within 3 days, I guarantee I'll deliver what you need into your hands. Having settled matters with Tommy, I prepared to leave in high spirits. As I exited the tea house, a familiar Bentley was parked curbside, its window lowering to reveal Ethan's dour expression. Get in, he ordered. I pretended not to hear and walked on, but he abruptly alighted and seized my wrist. Jasmine, how long do you intend to keep this up? Keep this up? I shook off his grip, regarding him coldly. Ethan, in your eyes, am I merely being unreasonable? He took a deep breath, suppressing his anger, his tone softening. Jasmine, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been with Mandy, but after all these years together, would you really destroy everything over this trifle? A trifle? His words nearly made me laugh in exasperation. Ethan, you call infidelity during marriage a trifle? It was an accident, he explained urgently. That day, I'd had too much to drink, and Mandy only came to comfort me. You comforted each other in my bed? I interrupted, each word cutting deep. Ethan, don't insult my intelligence further. You've been with her for 5 years, haven't you? His face blanched instantly. He likely hadn't expected me to know this. Did she tell you? A ruthless glint flashed in Ethan's eyes. That woman truly more hindrance than help. His reaction confirmed that the provocative messages Mandy sent weren't his doing. He might not even have known. Their bond wasn't as solid as they portrayed, merely a matter of mutual convenience. Who told me is irrelevant, I said, stepping back to widen the gap between us. What matters is, Ethan, we should divorce. I refuse, he rejected without hesitation. Jasmine, I won't divorce. The position of Mrs. is yours forever. Heh, I sneered, you're afraid divorce would tarnish your reputation and hurt Hua's stock price, aren't you? My words struck a nerve, and his expression grew uglier. I know you're still angry, he said, lowering his stance to placate me. Jasmine, name any compensation you want. Designer bags, jewelry, luxury cars, houses, anything you ask for, I'll provide. He assumed I was still the woman easily swayed by material goods. What I want, you can't give, I said, staring at him, enunciating each word. I want you and the Hua Corporation to be utterly ruined together. His pupils contracted sharply, the last vestige of warmth vanishing from his face. Jasmine, must you be so ruthless? You forced my hand. We parted acrimoniously. I knew Ethan wouldn't let this rest. Sure enough, the next day, numerous articles whitewashing him flooded the internet. uniformly pointing the finger at Mandy, claiming she had deliberately seduced him, and Ethan, momentarily confused, had merely made a mistake common to all men. Simultaneously, a slew of past affectionate photos of Ethan and me were released, crafting the illusion that he deeply loved me and had simply been deceived by a schemer. Paid trolls even steered the comment sections, accusing me of overreacting, being unforgiving, and lacking magnanimity. Which man doesn't stray? Ethan's realized his mistake. Jasmine should forgive him. Exactly, ruining your family over a mistress isn't worth it. This Jasmine isn't any saint herself. There must be something wrong with her for her husband to look elsewhere. Reading these twisted remarks, I found them laughable. Ethan's PR team had some skill, but unfortunately, they were up against me. Ignoring the online chatter, I contacted my legal team and filed for divorce in court. I also demanded a division of marital assets. Without a prenuptial agreement, by law, I was entitled to half of Ethan's fortune. Upon this news, his stock price plummeted once more. Patricia was hospitalized from sheer rage. Overwhelmed, Ethan could no longer sit idle and requested a meeting at a private room in an upscale club. When I arrived, he was already there, a divorce agreement before him. Jasmine, you've won. He looked haggard, dark circles heavy under his eyes. Sign it. Aside from his shares, I'll give you all other assets. I reviewed the agreement. The listed properties, luxury cars, and jewelry were collectively worth a fortune, sufficient to sustain me comfortably for life. In my past life, I might have wavered, but now, they were mere scrap to me. I pushed it back. I've said it. I want his shares. Dream on, he exploded. Jasmine, don't push me too far. Offering you this is already out of regard for our years as husband and wife. Regard? I scoffed. That regard was exhausted the moment you and Mandy hit our bed. Must it be a fight to the death? Not a fight to the death, I corrected. The fish dies, but the net remains intact. What I want was never just a divorce, it's the entire whole corporation, buried with him. Our negotiations hit another impasse. Just then, the door was abruptly flung open from outside. Mandy, clad in a white dress, rushed in, sobbing pitifully. Ethan! She threw herself at him, clutching his arm. You promised you'd marry me. Seeing her, Ethan's face turned ashen. He shook her off. What are you doing here? Who told you to come? Get out. I won't leave. Mandy wept, shaking her head. Ethan, everyone online is cursing me. Why is your PR team pinning all the blame on me? We truly love each other. Didn't you say you'd marry me after annexing the Leong family? Her words carried immense weight. I narrowed my eyes at Ethan. So this was the true reason he married me, to leverage the Leong family's influence to solidify his standing in Hua, then turn around and devour Leong. A masterful strategy of removing the fuel from the fire. Ethan, you're indeed more ruthless than I imagined. His face defied mere description as ugly. He likely never dreamed that the gentle confidant he'd nurtured would stab him in the back at the critical moment. What nonsense are you spouting? He interrupted furiously, his eyes blazing with warning. Yet Mandy, as if blind to it, continued her tearful tirade. I'm not lying. You clearly said Jasmine was just a pretty fool, and the Leong family would eventually be yours. With each sentence, Ethan's pallor deepened. While my heart remained utterly calm, I no longer felt pain over his ruthlessness. I merely observed the farce before me coldly, watching them turn on each other. Enough! Ethan finally snapped, slapping Mandy across the face. The crisp sound echoed sharply in the quiet room. Mandy fell to the floor, clutching her face, staring at him in disbelief. You hit me? I'm hitting you, you fool. Ethan trembled with rage. Who told you to act on your own? Do you realize you've ruined my entire plan? Mandy's tears fell harder. I just love you too much. I was afraid you'd abandon me. Love me? Ethan laughed as if he'd heard the greatest joke, squatting down and gripping her chin, his gaze menacingly dark. What you love is the title of Mrs. and the Hua family's wealth and glory, isn't it? I'm not. Shut up. Ethan flung her aside, stood, adjusted his disheveled collar, and resumed his lofty demeanor. He turned to me, his expression complex. Jasmine, what she just said was nonsense. Don't believe it. I smiled. Even now, he still tried to deflect. Ethan, I rose and approached him, locking eyes. Do you think I still believe you? His Adam's apple bobbed, but he remained silent. You know, I said, gazing at him, my greatest regret isn't loving you, it's not ensuring you lost everything the first time you betrayed me. With that, I turned and left the room without a backward glance. Behind me echoed Mandy's heart-wrenching sobs and Ethan's stifled roars. I knew they were finished, but my revenge had only just begun. Tommy proved highly efficient. On the third day, he handed me an encrypted USB drive containing records of all Hua Corporation projects over the past 5 years, notably several overseas acquisitions with chaotic accounts and unclear fund flows, clear evidence of money laundering and tax evasion, enough to imprison Ethan for life. Yet I had no intention of turning this over immediately. The cat-and-mouse game is best played slowly for amusement. I wanted him to watch helplessly as his painstakingly built empire crumbled bit by bit, to taste the despair I endured in my past life. I anonymously sent a report on Hua's tax evasion to the tax authorities, then settled in leisurely to watch the drama unfold. As expected, the next day, the tax authorities formed a special investigation team and made a high-profile entry into Hua Corporation. Upon the news, the already faltering stock price took another hit, dropping below its issue price. Shareholders panicked, offloading their stocks en masse, while I instructed Miles to discreetly acquire these scattered shares on the secondary market. Ethan, frantic, sought help everywhere but met constant rejection. When the wall falls, all push. Former sycophantic partners now shunned him, and he finally grasped the fickleness of human relations. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Victor, the Hua family patriarch, once a dominant figure in Jiangqing. His voice now bore exhaustion and helplessness. Jasmine, let's meet. I didn't refuse. The meeting took place at the Hua family's old residence, a quaint courtyard unchanged since my first encounter with him, yet the people had altered. Victor sat in an armchair, fingering prayer beads, markedly aged since our last meeting. Sit, he gestured to the opposite chair. I complied. A servant brought tea and withdrew silently, leaving just the two of us in the tea room. Girl, call it off. Victor broke the silence first. I know Ethan wronged you, but the Hua family mustn't collapse. Name any compensation, I'll provide it, so long as you drop the lawsuit and hand over your evidence. Grandpa, I said calmly, meeting his eyes, what if I say I want Ethan left with nothing? His hand, rolling the beads, paused. He raised his gaze, a sharp glint piercing his cloudy eyes. Girl, leave some leeway for future encounters. I chuckled lightly, I care not for the future. Victor's face darkened completely. You think you and that useless brother of yours can topple Hua? His voice carried disdain. Jasmine, you're too naive. Naive or not, you'll soon see, I said, sipping my tea lightly. Aren't you afraid I'll ensure neither my brother nor I leave Jiangqing? His words bore an unabashed threat. I set down the cup and smiled. Grandpa, you're old. I stood, looking down at him. Today's Jiangqing is no longer an era you can dominate single-handedly. Do you think I'd come here unprepared? I retrieved another document from my bag and placed it before him. This is evidence of Ethan transferring Hua assets via overseas shell companies. I imagine the inspection team would find it quite compelling. Victor's pupils contracted sharply. With trembling hands, he picked up the document, his face growing paler as he read. Where did you get this? You don't need to know, I replied, fixing my gaze on him. You only need to understand that, if I choose, Hua can be irreparably ruined at any moment. What do you want, exactly? Simple, I said, my smile fading to a cold edge. I want Ethan to leave with nothing and to hold a press conference publicly apologizing to me. Impossible. Victor rejected without a second thought. Making him leave penniless and apologize publicly, that's worse than death for him. Then let him die, I shrugged indifferently. You. Victor pointed at me in fury, speechless for a long moment. Grandpa, my patience has limits, I said, picking up my bag to leave. If I don't see the outcome I desire by 8 a.m. tomorrow, this document will find its rightful place. With that, I turned and left the Hua residence without looking back. I knew Victor would yield. He had other grandsons, but the Hua family's century-old legacy was singular. As expected, at 7:50 the next morning, Ethan's apology statement appeared punctually on the front pages of major media outlets. In the video, clad in a black suit, he looked haggard and lifeless, reciting the apology script word by word to the camera. He admitted to infidelity during our marriage, acknowledged betraying me, and begged my forgiveness, resembling a beaten stray. Shortly after, my lawyer received the signed divorce agreement, relinquishing all assets and opting to leave penniless. Jiangqing was abuzz. No one had foreseen this tycoon's marital saga concluding thus. Meanwhile, Mandy fared no better. As her role as the knowing third party escalated, major brands issued statements terminating their partnerships with her. Several TV dramas she was filming urgently recast her, erasing all her scenes entirely. Companies she'd invested in saw their stock prices plummet due to her scandal, incurring severe losses overnight. She fell from a sought-after starlet to a reviled pariah. Unresigned, she attempted to garner sympathy on Instagram, claiming victimhood and deception by Ethan. Alas, netizens remained unmoved. The comment sections overflowed with vitriol and scorn. Now you play the victim? Where was this humility when you wrecked someone's family? You deserve it. This is the fate of a mistress. Get out of the entertainment industry. Mandy was wholly blacklisted online, her career obliterated. She called me, weeping and pleading, "Jasmine, I know I was wrong, I truly do. Please, show mercy and give me a way out." A way out? I sneered. When you sent me that video, did you consider leaving me one? When you and Ethan drove me to despair, did you think of sparing me? She was rendered speechless by my questions. Mandy, this is all your own doing. I hung up and blocked her number. Mercy toward an enemy is cruelty to oneself, a lesson I'd learned with my life. With these matters resolved, I could finally breathe easier. With my aid, Miles' company had stabilized and showed signs of emerging as Jiangqing's new elite. I became the Liang Group's largest shareholder. I thought my revenge was complete, but I hadn't anticipated Ethan's unrelenting resentment. That day, as I left the company, a black van blocked my path. Several burly men disembarked and, without a word, bound me and forced me into the vehicle. I didn't resist. I saw Ethan in the driver's seat, his once enchanting eyes now ablaze with frenzied hatred. "Jasmine, you didn't expect this, did you? Meeting again so soon," he said, gazing at me, hands and feet tied through the rearview mirror with a grotesque grin. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. "What else?" He laughed maniacally. "To take you somewhere nice, of course." He started the car, driving toward the winding mountain roads in the suburbs. Watching the scenery blur past, I felt an ominous foreboding. The car halted at the cliff's edge atop the mountain. Ethan dragged me out and shoved me roughly to the brink. The wind howled, tousling my hair wildly. Beneath my feet lay a fathomless abyss, a scene eerily reminiscent of my past life. "Jasmine, aren't you so capable? So cunning?" Ethan stood behind me, his voice thick with glee. "Did you calculate you'd die here? Kill me, and you won't escape either." I stared into the bottomless cliff, yet felt no trace of fear. Escape? Why would I need to? His laughter grew wilder. "Do you think I'm still that illustrious, Ethan? I've nothing left, a worthless life. Dragging you to hell with me makes it worthwhile." He advanced step by step. "You know," he whispered in my ear, audible only to us, "my biggest regret isn't cheating, it's not strangling you that night." I laughed. "Ethan, you're truly pathetic. You're facing death, and you can still laugh?" My smile seemed to enrage him. He seized my throat, and suffocation gripped me once more. Just as I thought I'd repeat my past life's fate, blinding headlights pierced upward from the mountain's base, followed by shrill police sirens. Ethan's face transformed instantly. He stared incredulously at the police cars racing up, then at me. "You called the police?" I forced a strained smile. "From the moment you tied me into the car, my smartwatch automatically activated its alarm system, tracking our location in real time." "Ethan," I said, locking eyes with him, "I told you times have changed." He stood frozen, despair flooding his gaze. The police swiftly encircled us. "Ethan, you're surrounded. Release the hostage immediately." Ethan looked at me, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. I knew he intended to drag me down with him, but a split second before he acted, a familiar figure leapt from a police car. It was Simon, my university senior and Jiangqing's most promising young lawyer. In my past life, he'd confessed his feelings, but I rejected him for the family alliance after my death. He tirelessly sought justice for me despite his might, though it ultimately came to naught. Ethan! Don't be rash. Simon's voice rang with urgency. Seeing him, Ethan grasped at a lifeline. Simon. Perfect timing. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Jasmine came here willingly. It's got nothing to do with me. He still tried to weasel out, incorrigible as ever. Simon ignored him, his worried gaze fixed on me. Jasmine, don't be afraid. Seeing Simon, my taut nerves finally eased slightly. Senior, I called softly, realizing Simon disregarded him. Ethan panicked, tightening his grip on my throat and shouting at the police and Simon, stay back. One step closer, and I'll take her down with me. The scene locked into a tense standoff. Simon raised his hands, signaling no threat, and approached slowly. Ethan, calm down. If you stop now, there's still time. Attempted kidnapping might mean a few years at most, but a fatality, and your life is truly over. I'm already finished. Ethan's emotions surged. It's all this wretch's fault. She destroyed everything. If I suffer, she won't fare better. As he spoke, he moved to pull me over the cliff. In that critical instant, Simon yelled, Jasmine, duck. I instinctively obeyed. Bang! A gunshot shattered the silent night. I felt the hand on my throat release abruptly. Ethan's body slumped to the ground, a bullet hole in his brow. A sniper had struck. I was safe. Simon rushed over, enveloping me in a tight embrace, his body trembling faintly. It's okay, it's all over. The familiar scent of grass surrounded me. I leaned into his arms, the grievances and fears long suppressed within me spilling forth at last. It was my first tears since rebirth, not for Ethan, but from the relief of survival and the warmth of being cherished. Ethan was dead. Attempted kidnapping, armed resistance, shot on the spot. The news barely rippled through Jiangqing. A fallen stray garnered no concern for his fate. The Hua family, too, was seized for tax evasion, asset transfers, and other crimes. I never said. His apology obliged my forgiveness. Victor's hair turned white overnight. A stroke left him paralyzed, destined to spend his remaining years bedridden in a hospital. Mandy's fate was scarcely better. Blacklisted online, she amassed crippling debts, forcing her to consort with sleazy tycoons to repay them. Once, caught by a tycoon's wife, she was stripped, beaten nearly to death, and dumped on the street. The video went viral online. She became the internet's laughingstock, ultimately breaking down and being committed to a mental hospital. Truly, karma cycles justly. With Simon's assistance, I fully liquidated the Hua family's assets, successfully absorbing the Hua Corporation. The Liang Group soared to become Jiangqing's largest enterprise. Miles and I emerged as the city's new legends. The dust had settled. As for remarriage, that can wait for now. Things are already quite good.